Great. So we are live on YouTube as well now. So welcome all the speakers and attendees to this important webinar. CoP, as they say, is the most live on YouTube as well now. CoP, as they say, is the most important event for humanity to come on a single platform. Attendees to this important
feedback coming, Bhavish.
Yeah. CoP, as they say, is the most important event for humanity to come on a single platform and share their bit for the betterment of Mother Earth and well-being of present and future generations. The verdict is out, and it's a mixed bag. We'll try to deliberate on issues and pointers that probably need more attention. For someone as a student, it might point to a future career option. For a planner, it speaks for future tech and its development. And on a larger canvas for everyone, it's just important to see what your and mine leaders, the civil society, and public at large is doing to inspire change. Adaptation was the objective of particular emphasis during the deliberations. Parties established a work program to define the global goal on adaptation, which will identify collective needs and solutions to the climate crisis already affecting many countries. The Santiago Network was further strengthened by elaborating its function in support of countries to address and manage loss and damage. And the CMA approved the two registries for NDCs, and adaptation communications, which serve as channels for information flowing towards the global stocktake that is to take place every 5 years starting 2023. In addition, a key outcome is the conclusion of the so-called Paris Rulebook. An agreement was reached on the fundamental norms related to Article 6 on carbon markets, which will make the Paris Agreement fully operational, and methane 2 was discussed like never before. But how would it all be accomplished? Collaboration is the key. We are joined by Mr. Zolt, Director at Climate Reality Europe, weaving threads across the biggest geography and cultures, so to say. He was the person behind Climate Reality's booth at Glasgow, and let me tell you, it was among the most visited, most happening place out there. Collaborations were forged, and a renewed focus on working together is thought for. I welcome him to share his talk. Let us all know how Climate Reality carried it out and your own reflections from COP, Mr. Zolt. Over to you.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you all for inviting me and Europe for this event. And I'm so happy to be among, again, friends from India and continuing the collaboration that we started a few years ago at a fantastic conference on education on climate change. So that was really an amazing start of the cooperation between branches, not only between Europe and India, but with many others. So before I share a few slides with you, I would like to say as a kind of personal impression about the COP, that yes, we all arrived with the highest expectations that it's time to change. But we all know that COP is not able, the discussions are not able to change from one day to the other and to find a solution from one day to the other for the climate crisis. But I think that there are good progresses, as Bhavesh, you mentioned as well. And what is even more important, I think, the work that can be seen from the civil society, from the NGOs. So I have to say that this COP, these huge climate summits, are important because this is the meeting point where we can make a pressure on the decision makers. Without it, everything would be just kind of spreaded and difficult to influence. Here with the presence of the civil society, with the presence of almost I don't know how many thousands of activists from globally. I think that we managed to make a pressure on the decision makers, and the solutions are there because of our active presence. So if you don't mind, I'm trying to share my screen. I hope you can see it. Just a few words about Europe, because I'm talking from Europe, and the climate policy of the European Union has a huge impact, not only on our continent, but I'm sure that on all other continents. And besides this impact, we have the moral obligation to lead the climate negotiations, to lead the climate solutions globally. So without going through this huge sheet, I just would like to mention that the EU arrived with a new proposal, which is the new NDC target for the European Union, reducing 55% its greenhouse gas emission comparing to 1990, which is good comparing to the previous NDC, which was only 40%. But if we change it in the light of what the civil society demands for Europe, is a little bit weak. There should be at least 65% reduction on the emissions according to our voices, based on science. So this is the demand, this is the target that not only Climate Reality Europe, but hundreds of other civil society organizations are working inside Europe. When we talk about EU climate policy, and we would like to analyze what is in the focus of Climate Reality Europe, I have to say that, of course, ambitions. So we want to increase those NDC numbers and reach this magic 65% by 2030 as quickly as possible. And in line with those ambitions, we are working also on the details of the so-called Fit for 55 package. This is the official name of the European legislative package that was launched a few months ago and still under negotiation, still under discussion of the EU member states. And our approach, again, from the civil society, it shouldn't be called Fit for 55, it should be called Fair for 1.5 package. So we must take our fair share to be able globally reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target and support other regions with our solutions. Three issues here, what I just would like to highlight. The package is talking about fair and socially just solutions. Of course, this is important. The package also talks about ensuring a level playing field vis-a-vis third country economic operators, and this was highlighted with red because we can see here that if the European Union demands all the regions, all the countries to meet this requirement, then it might be a huge pressure on developing countries. So we as civil society organizations, we have some comments on this condition. And last but not least, again, the package is talking about that EU must lead the way in the global fight against the climate change. So as focusing on the EU climate policies, here in Europe, Climate Reality focuses on, obviously, on inclusion, on awareness raising. So we would like to channel voices of unheard communities, minorities, indigenous communities to the discussions. We are focusing on the just transition, as it was mentioned also by the Fit for 55 package, because this shift from fossils to renewables needs an approach where we assure everybody that no one will be left behind, because if this will not be managed properly, then we will fail. We will not be able to make this shift happen, or not on time. And last but not least, we also focus on climate justice. We would like to emphasize our global responsibility in Europe, but at the same time, focusing also on some local challenges, because even if you think that climate justice is might not be relevant for Europe, there are quite a few topics like energy poverty, which is a huge issue even in countries like in the United Kingdom or in Germany, that we have small communities that are suffering from the high energy prices, or not able to heat up or cool down their homes properly. So we believe that energy democratization is the way forward. So we should provide those systems not through big energy providers, but through local communities. We started our work on the CoP with the so-called pre-CoP. Pre-CoP was an event organized in Italy, in Milan in October, which was just a month earlier than the CoP, because this climate summit was in the hands of Italy and UK jointly. So they were partners in it. And throughout the pre-CoP, we focused on supporting the youth, because we felt that a strong message can be channeled to the decision makers through the youth delegates. So our Italian climate leaders focused on capacity building of the youth groups, of the youth delegates, and as an outcome, you can see that Milan Youth Charter, climate charter, was launched. Obviously, this is just the first page with several messages how the youth demands the leaders to work on the climate policies. When we talk about the Glasgow CoP itself, then I have to mention that the Team UK was absolutely amazing in this work. They created actually not only 3 but 4 working groups within the British and the Scottish climate leaders. The first one was working on the path to Glasgow, which was about awareness raising and building again the capacities of the civil society. Then in the second pillar, they were absolutely active during the CoP, and now they are working on the legacy of the CoP. And the fourth pillar that I'm sorry I didn't mention it here, but obviously was about the communication efforts connected to all these activities and to the CoP in UK. But we arrived to the CoP with our own demands. So what we as a European branch, we thought that there are 3 top priorities that we would like to see, wanted to see as a solution throughout the CoP. The first one was about faster and deeper emission reductions. The second one was increased support to communities. We want to underline that the financial assets should be provided not only to governments, because we can see that it's not that effective, but instead of that to local communities. And we want to see reliable emissions calculations and reporting, because without it, it will not work. So the rule book is essential, what Bhavesh also mentioned. So during the CoP, along these messages, and together with the UK team, we organized something like 38 events. So I just calculated it. I was really shocked on the number of the events that we organized. obviously not alone, most of them in partnership with other organizations like the Climate Cafe, or with the Calvin College, or with CE Bankwatch, or Children's Parliament, or the Climate Crisis Film Festival. So you can see that working on a program like this will only be effective and possible if you have the right partners to reach to the communities, to the societies, or even to the decision makers. So here you can see some pictures from the climate cafes where we reached out to the local citizens with the support of climate-ready leaders all over the world. I just would like to mention Rituraj here as well, as one of the speakers of the climate cafes and other events. So I think that the voices of India and the voices of other Asian countries were really channeled into the discussion. And as I mentioned, reaching out to the decision makers, we organized 3 major events throughout the 2 weeks, where we wanted to send our messages directly to the decision makers. The first one was the first 2 events were about just transition. As I mentioned, just transition is crucial to win the battle on the territories. And the third one was about climate justice, and I think all 3 events were really well organized and very meaningful. Just I would like to mention one amazing achievement of the Just Transition Forum, which was organized on the 8th of November, where we invited also the Minister of Just Transition of Scotland. I think that it's not well known, but there is a Ministry of Just Transition. Scotland is the capital of the European oil and gas mining sector in Aberdeen. And they already realized that because of phasing out of the fossil fuels, they have to start managing this process. So this is the reason why there is a Minister of Just Transition who is working already on this important topic. What we also know that the minister is surrounded by the experts, by the advisors of the oil industry as usual. So we decided to organize this forum on a slightly different way, inviting the minister not to open it, not to make the keynote speech, but to listen to our speakers. And after following and listening to all speeches, to share his observations, his feedback. And the result is even surprising for us, because after the forum, he promised to have a regular meeting with our Just Transition experts, which is really outstanding. I think that finally there is a good channel to the minister to speak about just transition from the point of view, from the angle of the civil society and the workers. I think that this is a fantastic result, but I think that, as I mentioned, all the events that we organized or other NGOs organized, or not even mentioning the protest in Glasgow on the first week Saturday with 100,000 participants. I think this all had an impact on the outcomes of the COP. And let's hope that Greta Thunberg's message will work in the future. No more exploitation of people, nature, and planet. No more blah blah. This is our role. This is why we were there together with you, with climate leaders from Africa, from Latin America, and with all the partners. Thank you.
Zolt, amazing work, I would say, amazing work. Thank you so very much for sharing it all. It would probably help us in times to come prepare for similar events. Thank you so very much. And let me tell you, our leaders are also taking notes of it. So thanks for it. Next, we have Mr. Rituraj Phukan, founder of Indigenous Peoples Climate Justice Forum and National Coordinator Biodiversity. Besides this, he is one of the most active leaders in South Asia. He too engaged with a multitude of stakeholders there and was a front runner to raise voice for indigenous people as well. We are eager to hear from you, Rituraj. All yours.
Thank you, Babesh, and thanks to Jolt for taking us through that review of all that we did at during the COP at Glasgow. And I must share that the atmosphere in the Climate Cafe was incredible. We got a chance to network with climate reality leaders, some of which were trained back in 2007, and some of them as recently as the last virtual training just about a week back before the COP. We saw a lot of indigenous people's participation here during the COP, both inside the Blue Zone as well as inside events and all the events that were organized at various platforms by civil society. And for the first time in the history of the UNFCCC, actually 28 indigenous peoples were nominated from each of the 7 UN indigenous sociocultural regions to engage directly as knowledge holders and share their experiences as indigenous experts with governments. I think that was a big, one of the big takeaways when you talk about indigenous peoples. And yes, personally, I got the opportunity to be a voice of the original people at the Nature Pavilion in the Blue Zone on the 3rd, and then also meet some of the top indigenous leaders who have been fighting this same fight, the environmental wars, and now coming into climate change for a long, long time. Some really big time veterans like Tom Goldtooth, who was really surprised that India has so many indigenous communities, but not many voices are heard on the global stage. And in fact, I was surprised to learn that we do not have representatives from the indigenous communities as part of those big environmental and climate justice organizations that were inside those COP negotiations. And I also had the opportunity to, of course, work with Shuka, who is on the panel on a climate justice webinar, along with Gloria Bolus, who is another of the award, the Alfredo Circus Award winners from last year. So that was an amazing experience at the Kelvin College. And we were able to discuss issues that pertain to this region. And I had a feeling that not many people, especially in Europe, know about what is happening on the ground in the front lines of climate change. We were able to perhaps convey the real challenges of loss of lives and livelihoods from floods and erosion and storms across the Himalayas, especially in the eastern Himalayas, in Assam, where I live, as well as coastal communities and communities that are affected by the water crisis. So all these issues were discussed widely in not only in my own meetings, but I felt a lot of Indian representatives were bringing up these issues because we have seen a lot of the impacts already this year. So I will start my, I will end my starting comments here. Thank you.
Thanks, Rituraj. These are really insights out there, and thanks for taking a stand for the last man standing out there. Just imagine, listeners, how much more we need to do to think and act for them. Thanks for being there for all of them. And next, we invite Ms. Shuka. Media, as they say, is the fourth pillar of democracy. Thanks to media, we are made aware of every little thing that is happening across the globe, and obviously COP was no exception. We invite Ms. Shuka, who not only initiated an environment vertical at Marzan television network, but is also a host to a popular show on environmental issues in Persian language at Monato TV. She is winner of the Alfredo Sirkis Memorial Green Ring Pin Award, earlier known as the Green Ring Award, but now named after the late branch head of Climate Reality Brazil that we proudly wear. Madam, we welcome you to this part of the world. And let me tell you, Persian used to be the language of this subcontinent too. Stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And hello and greetings from London. I would like to share with you some of the bullet point comments that I have from my experience at COP26, and I think it is worth sharing with my fellow climate reality leaders. I had the opportunity and the honor to interview Mr. Gore for my upcoming documentary, which is going to be about climate change. Hopefully it will be launched in the next week or two. We are still working on that. And something very interesting Mr. Gore mentioned during the interview, he said that I learned that we cannot expect a full package, meaning a complete solution as the outcome of just one conference of climate change, COP26 or any of them. He said he's been to most of them since the very first one and the Earth Summit before COP1 in Rio. So having that at the back of our mind, we know that although this year we might have not achieved what we aimed for, which was keeping the temperature below 1.5 degrees, but we should not ignore the achievements we have made. I think we need to, it is crucial for us to stay positive and hopeful and carry on the work we do, because what I have seen with my own eyes at COP26, which is the reason why we are all here even now today, is the power of activism and the power of people on the ground. And this is what I've seen with my own eyes at COP. And one of the most fascinating things that I have experienced and seen was the presence of the youth activists. And I think that's just fascinating. I interviewed one of them from South America who was there, an 18-year-old activist as the ambassador to speak for Latin America and the next generation. And it was just so fascinating to see how the movement, where it has gotten today, which is of course the result of what we have been doing over the years. And so it is really, really important to highlight the work that we are doing as activists and the fact that we need to keep doing it and pushing for it. It is very important. When and the spirit was in the air everywhere. I know we haven't achieved what we aimed for, but again, I had a talk with Mr. Sharma, Alok Sharma, the president of COP26 as well. And he said that the spirit of collaboration is what he has seen, something we have not really seen much of previous years. And of course, one of the most important topics that was one of the reasons I decided to go ahead with the climate justice event. We know that climate justice is at the core of what we do at Climate Reality, but also having done the Climate Reality talk, in so many different places, for so many different communities around the world, I have come to an understanding that people do not know much about the historic emissions of carbon. And I think it is a very, very delicate point that we need to point out, because unfortunately, even the media, especially Western media, is not trying to highlight the truth about it. So when we talk about India, when we talk about China, I'm sure you have read the news. I've tried to, when I come back from Glasgow, I try to have a recap on what happened at CoP, and I highlighted the commitments that India made going to carbon zero by 2070, the comment they had on phasing out of coal, and of course, China. All we heard was, yes, we know that as two big emitters right now, they might not be doing what they're supposed to be doing. But one thing that we need to make the whole world understand, and especially people because they're not aware of that, is the historic emissions and the responsibility that countries like the UK, EU, and the US have because of the carbon and greenhouse gases that emitted since 150 years ago. And this is something that I don't see being pointed out properly or enough in the media, which is something I am trying to do. And it's a big part of my documentary that is going to come out, because even though we managed to have some really decent commitments this year, we still haven't managed to get that $100 billion that the rich developed countries promised to give in order to help the developing countries and the most affected countries for the damage they have done in the previous years. And we had our special slides, the UK slides, that pre-COP, we had many events leading up to COP. And the slides are quite amazing. I don't know if we can share them with everyone, but it was a very clearly points out the emissions, that comparing the, proportionately looking at the emissions emitted by citizens in China, citizens in the subcontinent, and the US. And I think it's definitely one of the issues that we need to always bear in mind. And we as climate reality leaders have the chance to get out there, speak out, and let people know and let the world understand about the historic emissions. I think once we have a proper grasp of what that is, I think that's what the negotiations have been for the past 20 years. The developing countries are saying, let's all stop emitting or reduce, our carbon emissions. But then we have the other side of the story and the negotiations, which is, okay, so how about your historic emissions, and who's going to pay now for the damages that we are experiencing in countries like India, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and many, many countries in Africa that have emitted really almost zero or nothing to create this crisis that we are in at the moment. I had a talk with one of the delegates from Ghana, for example, and it was just so beautiful to see. And I think we also need to look at those countries that are not a big part of the emissions, but they still understand even a tiny percentage of emission is still something. So they feel responsible to be a part of this global reduction movement and still take part and do their part and their share of reducing carbon emissions. So yeah, I'm going to stop right there. But I think when we look at the deal that we have made at the end of the day at COP26, from 2.7 degrees, they managed to, make commitments for 2.4 degrees. All I want to say, because I know, just like me, many of you are still concerned about keeping the rising temperature below 1.5 degrees. I talk a lot with the climate scientists that I work with, and the good news is that the dream or the goal of achieving that 1.5 degrees is still alive. So all we need to do is to keep on doing what we do, push more and push the world leaders, and just make the countries, come up with better NDCs for next COP in Egypt. That now should be our goal. Doing what we do and push for more, because the dream or the goal to reach that 1.5 degrees is still alive, and I'm certain that we can do it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shuka. So as they say, brilliant observation, sharp observations as a media professional out there. Thank you so very much for sharing those insights with us. And with this, we move to our own neighborhood. Mr. Aditya Pundir, among the early batch of leaders trained from the region and currently Director South Asia. Sir, you have been working at the grassroots level and understand the vulnerability of climate change for our region. Programs at your branch are reflection on creating mass awareness and a multiplier effect. Please help us decode COP26 for us. What is something that we all need to focus upon in the long and short term of it? Over to you, please.
Thank you, Bhavesh. And I'm really thankful to Zolt and Shuka for bringing the insights from Europe to us, because I think a couple of our climate reality leaders were asking that what's there for our region, what should we be doing? So I think we're really thankful to all of you, and especially Rituraj for representing us. So now coming to we are, of course, as Shuka has already, she has made it a very, I think I really was thinking I'll have to first explain the climate justice part of it. But thanks to Shuka, she has really brought it out very nicely, that what is the climate justice and the equity which we are talking about in today's negotiation. Because actually it was the equity part which was initially in the initial COPs, it was said, but CBDR was a very important issue. But the general masses, especially the people, the media, they were not understanding it. But fortunately now, thanks to people like Shuka who are trying to bring it up in the print and the media and the visual media, now people have started discussing this more in detail, that what is the equity all about. Now, talking of equity from our perspective in South Asia, I would say that this is probably the one region, if you see the carbon footprint of any country, it's not going above 1.7 or 1.8. That is the kind of carbon footprint these people have, the whole region has. And then also seeing that the vulnerability of this region, like this area, South Asia, whether it's India, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Maldives, whether it's Sri Lanka, like all these people are highly threatened. Like if you make a ranking of the regions in the world, we are on the top 10. And I think as very famously Mr. Gore shows in his slideshow, that the most impacted places would be Kolkata and Mumbai. So coming to these things, what we are doing, we are seeing is that on one side, India is in a very, very precarious position, I would say. On one side, we are in the cross eye of the storm. Like we are probably going to be worst affected in coming times by 2050. And also we are a country which is growing very fast. We are a very young country. It's a country which is now has one of the highest number of probably poor people in the world. And we are trying to take them out of poverty. And currently we are dependent, literally 70 to 75% of our energy is coming from fossil fuels. That's a coal. So there's no way out. And then as Shuka rightly talked about finance, like our Prime Minister very rightly said, that an investment of about 1 trillion would be required, not even 100 billion. If you really want to talk about transformation and you want to talk about going into cleaner energy forms and reduce the coal from the planet. So these are some of the challenges which this region is facing while at negotiation. And another problem we are seeing in this region is that with the impacts coming, like there was not much discussion on the loss and damage, because that's one thing which probably now I think every Indian knows, or in the South Asia people know the kind of floods we have been seeing, the kind of like unusual floods, whether it's Chennai, whether it's Mumbai, whether it is Bangalore, so like unusual floods are coming. So that compensation is not there. But still, I would say that India especially made a very concrete attempt to do something. Because another very vague thing which we found in the COP26 was that everybody was talking about 2050 as a net zero target, but they had no proper plans that how they're going to reach there. Because most of the politicians probably feel they won't be there around to defend 2050. So they were all saying 2050 net zero. Well, they don't have a target for 2030. They don't have a target for 2040, and you're not going to jump into 2051 fine morning. So the plans, the detailed plans are missing. And that is the reason we are saying that next year, please come with plans, like how you plan to reach net zero. That way, I would say India did very well. Like our targets were all 2030. Like the Prime Minister, of course, 2070 was a big target of going carbon neutral or zero emissions. But I think it was more important to study India's targets for 2030. They are the more crucial targets, and they're something which is very doable, I think, which the way India is looking at. Because if you look at our energy, like we were planning to have 450 gigawatts by 2030, but now the Prime Minister has upped it to 500 gigawatt. So we are having a slight increase as far as the renewable energy would be concerned. And currently we are at 100. So I think for 400 gigawatts, we'll have to add in the coming 10 years, which will be quite a substantial amount. Then second important target we talked about was energy, like how much energy we are going to draw from clean energy. Like, as I said, our 75% energy is coming from coal. So how much electricity are we going to draw from renewables? Like currently it's around 20%. But the new target is now 50%. That's what the Prime Minister has committed, that 50% of India's energy will come from renewables. So now again, it's a huge jump from 20% to 50%. So again, this will make a lot of difference. Then the third important target they talked about was intensity. There's like what the India's intensity would be. So it was about 33 to 35% initially from 2005 level, but now they're talking about 45%. So again, it's going to be a substantial decrease. I would always say increase in efficiency part of it and decrease in the emission part of it. And this ultimately should lead to what he talked about, 1 billion tons of emissions, which India wants to pull out. Now that's very substantial, because you see what's happening is the way the matrix we are seeing, if the things are not done, we should be having increase in emissions. So India is talking about decreasing its net emissions. So there'll be hardly any increase in emission as far as India is concerned by 2030. Like we stand today at, I think, around 2.4. So I think 3.3, I think we stand at in this year, and probably around 4.6 is what is expected. Billion ton is expected in 2030. And out of this, Prime Minister is saying that we will be cutting out 1 billion. So there will be hardly any increase. And that is very doable. Like people may say it's not doable, but it is doable in case you get your intensity down to 45%, because that is a crucial thing. If your economy is going to grow with 45% reduction, so then it will lead to about 1 billion tons of emissions being taken off. So in a nutshell, I think the roadmap is very clear the way India has put it up. And now the thing is, we will have to closely monitor and see how the policy is laid out and how much. And I think the very big caveat I would say here would be investment part of it. If the correct investments are not made available to India at the right time, and especially some of the technologies which we are looking forward to, especially in solar, if they're not made available, and especially with respect to hydrogen, if they're not available, then I think it will be a very tough target. It will be, India has committed, but it will be a very tough target. And let us see, because the thing is, when you are talking about a COP, well, India is a democracy, like most of the Europe and Americas. And all these parties, the political parties come for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, and then they'd have a change. So in case if there is not much of assistance coming globally on finance and other things, it will be very difficult for the domestic parties, the ruling parties, to defend their targets, that why they are not doing the right things and why they are doing those things, because they'll have to get back into office in the next term. So this political compulsion, I think, is going to be extremely crucial in coming times. So I think it's very important that we have the international community helping especially the developed world, I would say, helping the developing countries by putting in the right investment. At least the people should feel that it is coming and something is happening. So I think then we can take it down to the grassroots and bring it here. So that's probably from my side.
Thank you so very much, Aditya ji, for these insights. I think South Asia ought to dive deep and see what can be done. In fact, we have some questions also coming on similar lines on technology and similar aspects. Participants, please put your questions in the chat room or in the QA section. we'll be taking it up if time permits. So it's an open question for anyone. Just unmute and answer, panelists. Mr. Rajneesh is asking, is there a new scientific and effective idea suggested in COP26 for reduction of carbon? Is a replacement of fossil fuel thought of? Anyone who wants to answer that?
I could just have a tiny comment. I'm sure others can complete. For the first time, we had the term fossil fuels mentioned in the commitment. So that was, again, one of the positive achievements at COP26. And in terms of the scientific facts and updates on that, we had one of the panels that I actually, one of the events that I participated in was the panel of scientists and experts from IPCC, and they basically reviewed the science they've already published a few months ago before the event. So this would be my little comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Indeed, unfortunately, coal was discussed more, but not gas and other fuel sources, which otherwise are making a emission count out there. Another question from Mr. Sandeep: how much agriculture is contributing to climate change? And I'll add the home-based fossil fuel as well to that. And what are the opportunities to reduce those emissions from agriculture? Rituraj or Aditya ji, if you want to answer that, please.
Well, Aditya ji, I think would be best to answer that. And I just quickly want to add something to Aditya's earlier comments. Okay, we all agree that COP26, the Glasgow Climate Pact, is a compromise, and there has been a lot of efforts to make India a scapegoat, kind of to blame India for watering down of the text, but one thing was very conveniently forgotten. Just a few days earlier, it was India who had actually suggested that the phasing down of, or the phasing out of fossil fuels should include not just coal but all fossil fuels, including oil and gas, and that it should be implemented on an equitable basis. But that was opposed, and mostly by the US and other developing countries. So, and then, finally, when the text was released, the final text, and a lot of blame came on India. I just wanted to add that. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Our time is running short, so please be brief with your answers. A question is for Shuka from LC. Excellent sharing, Shuka, out there. My question to you is, ocean-based action was brought into climate UN climate process in Glasgow, but what are your comments on further commitment which are needed as far as oceans are concerned? Shuka, very quickly, yeah.
I would pass this on to Raj. I think he has more experience in the area. I wasn't quite involved with the oceans, the panel discussions during COP. I do apologize for that. Raj, do you think you can?
Yeah, I would like to just quickly add that in its preamble, the Glasgow Climate Pact actually highlights the importance of ensuring the integrity of all ecosystems, including forests, the ocean, and the cryosphere, and the protection of the biodiversity. So, of course, this is the first time that they have proposed an annual dialogue to strengthen ocean-based action and to integrate and strengthen ocean-based action with UN advocacy mechanism. Thank you.
Thanks, Rituraj. Pamoda is asking, I want to know the latest decision made at COP as far as carbon market and CDM project registration is concerned. Zolt, probably you want to answer that?
I'm not really familiar with this topic, unfortunately. If you allow me, I would like to contribute to the very first question about the technical solutions, and I think that it's important to mention the decisions on reducing the methane in the atmosphere. So there is a strong commitment from several countries, and the other topic, which is absolutely necessary for the future, is to stop illegal logging
webinar.
and deforestation. So I think that those two decisions were crucial. And I'm sorry that I cannot answer that question, which is.
I'll take that, Zod. I'll take that.
Please.
Yeah. See, regarding the carbon markets, there was a lot of discussion happening, and they have started again working on it with the carbon markets, and they have been suffering from actually a double accounting which has been going on with both the countries claiming that the seller as well as the buyer. So there have been some inherent weaknesses which have been there in the past. So now they are trying to, there's a movement now that if we can remove these glitches and the carbon markets can itself be established. But the only thing we should try to understand in these negotiations is that the carbon markets may not be the only solution for the climate change things which we are looking at, because we do not want to transfer emission reduction from one place to another. So it has to be an absolute reduction now. The time has gone when we could work on that the countries could buy credits and then they could transfer from developed world to developing world. The time is going by, and now probably we are looking at absolute reductions, because you see the target we are looking at is 45% reduction by 2030. Like in case if we want to say on 1.5 degree target, so currently, if you take land use and everything from $60 billion, 60 billion tons, we have to take it down to literally 25. So there's a huge reduction emission we are looking at. But yes, as far as the climate finance is concerned, and that's it is something which is on the cards now, that how to rectify and make it more robust.
Thank you. And what about green hydrogen? Any insights on that? Mr. Tenjing is asking on it.
Well, green hydrogen again is something, a technology which everybody is looking at, because probably currently, as you know, we are having more of blue hydrogen and we are having more of gray hydrogen. So the green hydrogen definitely is the epitome where everybody is looking at, and thanks to solar energy and thanks to solar and especially the new fuel cell technologies which we are looking at, probably green hydrogen may be the future. Yes. So there's a lot of, I think, as you can say, the whole of transportation sector, it is being projected in the future by 2030-35 will be riding on two pillars. Most probably you will be having electric cars, you will be having electric bikes. So in the cities, etc., people are predicting probably it will be more or less electric vehicles, and hydrogen would be powering all your trains. It will be powering your big, huge lorries and trucks and buses, or probably even planes in the future. So that's how probably the world is moving. Looks like.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Just to add to Aditya, the green hydrogen was very prominent in the green zone as well, and all across Glasgow, we saw some trucks and buses being on display as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Indeed. And then Nita Ganguly, again, one of our very, very old hand, is saying on meat and dairy consumption. Obviously, one's individual lifestyle also matter. Rituraj, you are the best example, turning vegan wholeheartedly. I think it takes courage with the kind of commitment you have made with yourself. Shikha is asking, how can we deviate young minds of say younger generation towards climate crisis, younger generation deviating their mind towards climate crisis? Anybody wants to answer that?
Yeah, I think I could just again have a very brief comment on this, because I was in touch with many of the youth activists during COP26, and one thing that every one of them had in common when we talked about how we can encourage more of the young people to be involved in the conversation, especially those coming from less developed countries, I would say. They all mentioned education and raising awareness. They all said that even though in many parts where they experienced the effects of climate change firsthand, they weren't aware why it was all happening and why all these events are very extreme. But once they learned about it, they realized the connection and the link between the extreme weather events they are experiencing and the signs of climate change. So they're saying that there is something that lacks in some parts of this globe is the education and the knowledge that is not given to the young activists. So I think, again, as activists, we can keep the conversation going on climate change, talking about it in the simplest way possible to communicate that knowledge. And I think once they have the knowledge, they would be unstoppable.
Great. Thanks.
If I may add
Yeah.
something to this, because that's a completely new direction that is coming from the UK and from Ireland, which is called intergenerational climate justice. And this is a series of conversation, of dialogue, of events between the next generations and the elderly people. And I think this is an amazing cooperation between the two two age groups, and obviously with the aim from the third generation, from the elderly people, to help the youngest to be active and to be more informed about the climate crisis. So I think this is something could be interesting also for other countries, other continents, to look into this aspect and to bring closer those generations that are at the moment not even talking about such issues. And I'm sure that elderly people, the senior people, has amazing knowledge about solutions that are not known by the next generation at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Zolt, for those insights. Aditya, I think your branch is also working quite actively for the youth and student community. Just a highlight on that, please.
Yeah, we are Bhavesh, running, as you know, a very extensive teachers training program, which is to cover and train teachers for building climate literacy, because we are trying to make people climate literate. And the another thing with youth is that we don't want to give a message of disaster. We want to give a message of hope. So that's something which I think Mr. Gaur also keeps talking about, that the youth has to be encouraged and they should have a hope that there's a solution existing. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So that's something which we are trying to go through our program. So what we are trying to do with the youth is we try to tell them that this is the crisis and these are the solutions. And now let's work towards it. So that should be the simple way, I think, the way we should be working with the youth, instead of depressing them, because that's another problem with the young people. They get depressed, they get excited, as well as they swing both ways. So that's why it's better that if we come out with a message of hope. So Climate Reality is doing a pretty massive program all over the country, where we are trying to get in touch with all the educational institutions, and we are trying to take the climate literacy message to the teachers, so that then they can talk to the children and community. So we are working on it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Just very quickly, I'll be reading out the names and the points and suggestions that people have made. We'll try to collate and answer them collectively from the panel. Mr. Veer Singh says, what is the most important aspect of climate change mitigation is to drive carbon of the biosphere into cycle, the biogeochemical cycle, and the most crucial part is played by carbon sequestering, driven phenomenally by photosynthesis. However, there is not a single word on photosynthesis in the whole talks about climate. So probably someone can take a note on that to answer. Then Mr. Abhishek says, question for Mr. Zolt. We have discussed involvement of government and individuals, but industry, business, which are among the largest emitters, what is their role? Europe is a hub of some of the worst polluting industries, fast fashion, automobiles, to name a few. What's your view onto that part, economic model of it? Then Mr. Vikrant is saying, is it possible to reduce carbon with modernized lifestyle of present society? We need to adopt sustainable models of lifestyle. Dr. Padma says, Aditya ji, political parties come and go, but can a body say exclusively for the reductions, how to go about it? Sunil Mysore, again a senior leader of ours, says, while cutting emissions is so talked about, why there is hardly any discussions around cutting consumption? Quite important, sir. And just quickly, if someone wants to collate and answer that.
Maybe just a word about the industry and the businesses in Europe. That yes, we have this responsibility to also to put a pressure on those stakeholders, on the industry and the businesses. And I think that you can see two major changes. First of all, in the finance industry now, they are considering, and especially not even considering, but divesting from fossils in many countries, many finance institutions, even insurance companies. So if there is no insurance for a new carbon or coal power plant, then that power plant will not operate. And that's an important issue. Related to the fast fashion, I would like to mention that there is a huge change in the mindset of the new generations, and they are many of them are refusing. Like there is a movement also starting from the Nordics, this no-fly movement, which has an impact already on the aviation industry.
Yeah, and regarding photosynthesis, which Veer Singh ji has asked, I think in the COP26 they have agreed that 100 countries have already signed that deforestation has to be stopped. And deforestation is all about photosynthesis, and because we are losing so many trees around the world. So deforestation, yes, everybody knows, because as for the technology we were talking about, there's still any technology which is as good as the trees. So trees are the best way to pull out carbon and turn it into oxygen simultaneously. So yes, I think the deforestation will have a lot of impact, because the way we are seeing the deforestation happening, first manually by people, and then of course the fires are taking their toll. So yes, there's been big work happening on this.
Thank you so very much, panelists and attendees out there. I think with these kind of discussions, with these kind of knowledge share, we are moving in the right direction to bring about some positive changes. Individual action matters. And I think with the kind of leadership that we all have got from Mr. Gore, the kind of inspiration he provides, everyone, at least within the community, knows I need to reduce my individual carbon footprint. I need to reduce at the place where I am working, and how to collaborate more and more, for which these COPs and these events are known for. Let me tell you, Zolt will be coming back to you for more and more collaboration with the tech transfers, with the collaborations with people and organizations working out there. Rituraj, your biodiversity experience matters with the not only Northeast region, very close to our hearts, but for the entire South Asia. We want to see more and more replicable models taking place. Shuka, you have been a source of inspiration, the kind of work you have done, the Green Ring Award. Let me tell you, it's a dream for everyone to aspire for it. And to attendees, on your behalf, I'm promising them any technology they have, anything, any suggestion they have, please touch base with us, please touch base with Shuka. I promise it would be aired on the Monato TV very soon. Aditya ji, you always inspire us, most accessible person as far as climate reality is concerned. You are always available to answer questions, for collaborations, for any kind of thing. Thank you so very much for standing and being there as you are. Thank you so very much, attendees. Thank you so very much, panelists, for your time, for your participation. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavesh.
Thank you.